Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Let me tell you what the mainstream media refused to tell you about the Women's March this weekend. CNN called it a year of resistance. CNN championed the women behind the Women's March, the founders. The New York Times published an article called Pictures of Women's Marches on Every Continent. They showed this picture, and they showed this picture. Yet they conveniently forgot to show this picture. Radical, violent feminists threatening to kill President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence. It's guillotine time, these violent feminists said, declaring war on President Trump and everybody who supports him. Yet no condemnation of this violent rhetoric from anybody on the left. PBS claims women of color were at the forefront of the Women's March. What PBS didn't show you was how the Women's March attacks white women. F white feminism, one sign read. Well, where was the mainstream media on that? What PBS didn't show you was how the Women's March shames white women for being white. How they accused all white women of being inherently racist because of our skin color. Not our actions, not our beliefs, not our characters. We white women are racist just because we're born white, they said. Well, you know, except Cher, who was trotted out as an example to young feminists everywhere. Really, ladies? Cher is the best you can do? The women of color at the forefront of the Women's March, let me parse what the mainstream media meant to say here. Linda Sarsour, co-founder of the Women's March, thinks Sharia law, where women are stoned to death for being raped, where women can't leave their house without permission from their husband, where women are forced to wear hijabs that cover their faces or be arrested by the morality police, where women are forbidden from working, playing, from co-ed social activities, sports, and are treated as less than second-class citizens, where women can't testify in court without a man corroborating their story. The co-founder of the Women's March, Linda Sarsour, thinks that Sharia law is reasonable. Linda Sarsour says she's never seen anything as patriotic as Palestinian terrorists throwing rocks at Jews in Israel. Linda Sarsour threatened to cut off the genitals of Muslim women who disagree with her. Linda Sarsour called for jihad to be waged against President Trump. That is the woman behind the Women's March. And that's just the short form of her resume. Other women behind the march, Alicia Garza, who claims one of her heroes is Assata Shakur, the domestic terrorist who murdered New Jersey State Trooper Warner Forster in cold blood, and then after she was convicted, she escaped prison and fled to communist Cuba. Then we have another original co-founder of the Women's March, Razmea O'Day, the convicted terrorist who bombed an embassy in Israel and killed 2 students. Great example of how to champion women right there. And the special guest star of the Women's March this year, Cecile Richards, just as white can be. But that's okay because of the self-flagellation condemning all white women, all the while steering an organization that presides over the death of 300,000 unborn children every year, including a hugely disproportionate number of black babies. And this disproportionate number of black babies aborted actually makes sense since you can donate to Planned Parenthood abortion clinics and have your donation earmarked to be used to abort a black child. You just tell them that you hate black people, and they'll still let you use your money specifically to end the life of a black child. Be the 7 out of 10 women who support abortion, the Women's March said, and the media parroted them. Now, what the media should have said, how about the 8 out of 10 women who support restrictions on abortion? How about the 9 out of 10 women who think Hillary Clinton is wrong and think late-term abortion is gruesome and grotesque and we shouldn't be doing that? Why are you excluding these women, the majority of women, pro-life women, from your so-called Women's March if the Women's March is in fact about championing all women? Spoiler alert, it's not. What the mainstream media should have said, an enormous peaceful rally, the largest human rights demonstration in the nation, hit Washington, D.C. on Friday. The March for Life is the real march for women, but we didn't hear about this from the mainstream media. No. CNN tweeted about President Trump's so-called anti-abortion stance in the March for Life, but that's all we heard. When the media said the Women's March was the year of resistance, they should have said the March for Life was 45 years of resistance to abortion, the largest exterminator of women in the history of the world. What the media should have said if they were telling the truth. The Women's March is nothing more than a race-baiting, lie-peddling, fear-mongering demonstration that liberal feminists care more about abortion than they care about women. They defer to Big Daddy government more than they respect the individual lady. They think we women care more about lady parts than liberty. And these liberal feminists prefer to stomp around in pink hats that last year were empowering and this year are discriminatory towards trans women. Well, they castigate and ostracize any woman who dares to disagree with their radical ideology. But of course, you won't hear any of that from the mainstream media. And that is my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, and until then, have a good night.